Hello, welcome to Calling America, where patriots from across the U.S. come together to discuss current bills being passed by Congress and executive orders being signed by former Vice President Joe Biden, and furthermore, how those bills and executive orders affect each of us in our respective states. As always, unless we are quoting direct sources, all statements in this video are personal opinions. You can find all sources in the description below.
Hello, everyone. I am Danita Knickerbocker. I currently work for Department of Homeland Security, and I am here with Truth Matters. I'm one of the co-founders, and I am from Utah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan Hay. I'm also one of the co-founders of Truth Matters. I am currently a college student and from Utah.
I am Courtenay Turner. I am also a co-founder of Truth Matters, and I am the host of the Courtenay Turner podcast and a motivational speaker, and I am here in California.
I am Sean Wood. I currently work in sales. I have a YouTube channel, and I am from Nevada.
My name is Mitchell Peel. I'm from the great state of Georgia. I'm a Department of Energy contract employee. I've been there for 23 years in project management.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody that's watching. If you guys will give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and make sure that you comment down below any questions that you have for us or any just good or bad comments. You know, they say all press is good press. If you have any questions for us, though, we will be sure to try and answer those when you comment. So we are going to get to it. Today, we are going to be talking about vaccine passports. So not vaccines just in general, but vaccine passports. Is there a precedent? Are there other countries that are doing this? Is there something that we could do maybe to avoid vaccine passports? How are these passports going to be regulated? How are they going to be created? How are they going to be enforced? Who is going to enforce them? All of these different things. Our residential expert on vaccines at the moment is Courtenay Turner. So I'm going to turn the time over to her just to kind of go over what she wrote in her article about the vaccine itself. And then we will discuss how making that a passport will affect each of us in our separate states and kind of how that might affect travel and things like that. So Courtenay?
Yeah, so I wrote an article about the vaccines, which is a very comprehensive subject right now, could probably be a book. And what I found in the process of doing my research was that I had so many questions and I really struggled to find answers. The opacity of information was, it was like looking through a, blacked out fence. It was really, really difficult to find stuff. I had to do a tremendous amount of digging. That alone concerned me. I believe information should be transparent. That is the reason that we have the First Amendment. One of the reasons that all of us here who founded Truth Matters founded it was because we want to present facts. You don't have to agree with us, but the hope is that by presenting facts that there will be a resurgence of inquiry and critical thinking, and the people can start to, I think, so I will just say that I personally think that we've been for so long taught what to think, and that a lot of people don't really know how to think anymore. So all this to say that when I was doing my research, I realized that I wasn't really going to find the answers that I wanted. So I presented questions instead. And hopefully those questions will get people thinking. And through those questions, I did find there were guides, because this is incredibly new technology. This is not a traditional vaccine. I think the fact that they're calling it a vaccine is a little bit deceitful, and one has to question why. I don't know how much everybody here knows, but for the audience to know that there is something called a vaccine court that was implemented in 1988 that has made vaccines really impervious to, that pretty much grants them impunity. It is really, really difficult to get any kind of recourse for vaccine injuries. in this country since 1988. And if you look at the trajectory, I actually didn't even put this in my article, but if you look at the trajectory, definitely in California and the rest of the country has certainly followed the mandates of vaccines from very young age. The number has increased exponentially since the vaccine courts were implemented. All of this is concerning, whether you're pro-vax, whether you're anti-vax, regardless. These are all facts that people should be aware of that a lot of people just aren't aware of. In looking at it, I really wanted to know, what are these quote unquote vaccines that I don't believe are vaccines? They should be called something else because they're not a traditional vaccine. A traditional vaccine, that's the first thing you would want to know. What is a vaccine? A vaccine is typically an attenuated virus, which means it is a weakened strain. It's either a dead or a weak live strain. Sometimes it's a hybrid of the virus that they're trying to inoculate you against. And the theory behind it is that it will force your body to build antibodies to that virus. You know, when you typically get a virus, you're sick, you don't feel so good. And then your body develops these antibodies and they're like, oh, the next time they see that, oh, hey, we got this, we know how to fight this. Obviously that's my cartoon analogy. But that's, the really simplified version of what happens. The vaccine is supposed to mimic that. This is not that. What this does is we have 3 that are being put forth in this country, that are similar to some other brands and variations in other countries. But we've got the Moderna, which people should know is short for modified RNA. We have the Pfizer, and then we have the Janssen, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. The methodology behind all of them is very similar, but slight variation between Pfizer and Moderna. Both use messenger RNA, and it's a synthetic messenger RNA in order to trigger, right? This is the theory that it will trigger spike proteins, which is one of the active proteins in the coronavirus. The Janssen one uses DNA. It's a viral vector. It uses an adenovirus, and most people don't know this, but the research I've found is that it uses chimpanzee adenovirus. It's a viral vector, so it injects it into the cleavage site of a DNA. So they're very similar. They're both modifying your genetic code, but one is doing it through a synthetic messenger RNA. So now in our body, again, to give you just a very quick science lesson, the double helix, I don't think I can do it with my fingers, but yeah, you guys know the double helix. One strand of that is a DNA, and that is your genetic coding material. Then you have RNA, which is where our bodies naturally have messenger RNA in them. The messenger signifies what RNA to code. It's just the code sequencing of the RNA, which is replicating the DNA. So what they've done is they've created a synthetic messenger RNA that's encased in a nanolipid envelope. And the reason they encase it in a nanolipid envelope is because it's synthetic genetic material that is indicating what code your body should sequence. And if your body were to receive that naturally, it would reject it. It would not survive because it would see it as a danger, as something dangerous. So that is what it's doing. So it's modifying. So the slight difference is one's modifying DNA, one is modifying RNA, which is very different than how traditional vaccines work. And there are lots of, there are similar studies that have been done with mRNA technology for the past 17 years, mostly on animals. Unfortunately, the animals did not fare very well. So we looked kind of at what the potential side effects could be, what the consequences that that this science indicates, and from the results that we've seen in this very short period of time. But essentially, this is only FDA approved for emergency use, which in a sense is kind of a blessing, because getting to our point today on the vaccine passport, it cannot be mandated. That is unconstitutional. We cannot mandate something that has not been FDA approved. So that is kind of the blessing. Now, of course, they are trying to rush this through. There's 3 months right now for the FDA approval. And I know that there are people currently working to present evidence that this should not be FDA approved, but that will remain to be seen, and it cannot be technically, legally mandated until it is FDA approved, not just emergency.
I just want to put one thing out there before we start kind of going over the questions. Along with the research that I did to help Courtenay on her article, I have cancer and I take chemotherapy every day. And my chemotherapy, when you look it up online, it is considered a tyrokinase inhibitor. And when you look up in the Johnson & Johnson emergency use authorization application, they state in there that the vaccine is comparable to a protein kinase inhibitor. So they are injecting people with chemotherapy. Yeah. Millions and millions and millions of people without them knowing it. The reason that chemotherapy even exists is to kill cells, not to create any sort of immune backing or antibodies or anything. It is to kill cells. Yeah. So what this is doing is they are putting this screen up saying it's a vaccine. But really, it is more comparable to chemotherapy. And they even say it in their application. They just don't use the word chemotherapy because nobody's going to look up what a kinase inhibitor is. It's more comparable to chemotherapy than it is to any vaccine that has ever been put forth and approved by the FDA. Yeah. So that's just a little thing to put out there. So for vaccine passports, I think the first question that we should kind of address is, how would these vaccine passports be regulated? Will there be a medical exemption to people that can't get the vaccine? Will there be an exemption for people that say, I don't want to get the vaccine? How is it going to be regulated? Mitch?
I listen to all kind of doctors. And one of the doctors I listened to was Sukarat Bhakti. I sent that over to Truth Matters Telegram page to link to it. This is pretty scary. And everything that Courtenay said is exactly true and comports with what that doctor was saying. One of the things he drove in on is, infection that comes through the lungs, okay, generally do not disseminate to the blood, especially in COVID. COVID does not disseminate to the blood. The antibodies that would be generated by a vaccine, if it actually generated antibodies, exist in the blood. So if it doesn't disseminate to the blood, how's it going to stop it? So I want to throw that out there. Now I'm going to get to the vaccine passports. What they're trying to do is not use state government or federal government to push it. They're going to use their wider range of corporate partners to implement this. Things like Delta Airlines, Walmart, big box stores, they're going to say, hey, you got to have a vaccine passport to enter the store. So the government's going to have their hands off. We didn't do anything. They're private business. They can do what they want. Now, the way to fight this is going to be through state government. Florida has already done this. Ron DeSantis has already signed into law that you cannot require vaccine passport to do any kind of, I don't really know the language, but it's probably going to be driven to like do any kind of business or move through the state. That would be actually, using any kind of public business. If you're in business, you're in public, so you won't be required to show a vaccine passport to enter the Circle K or the Dunkin' Donuts or the Walmart. Is that legal for the state to do that? Yes. Is it legal for a state or any businesses that hasn't been prohibited by states from doing that? Is that legal? It absolutely is. A business can say, hey, you can't come in here unless you show me proof that you have a vaccine passport, unless it's already been identified by the state as you can't do that. They can. I mean, they tell you no shirt, no shoes, no service. They can say no vaccine, no service. It's going to be up to the states and localities to push back on this. Otherwise, it may get spread too fast, too quickly, and won't be much you can do unless you can talk your legislation into fighting against it. It's plain and simple. And that's where they're going to use vaccine passports. There won't be a vaccine passport from the state. There'll be a vaccine passport if you want to go to a movie or go to dinner or stuff like that.
Here in Las Vegas is going to be at the casinos for the most part. And they're already doing stuff like this. Clark County has said that they're not going to open back up to 100% capacity for any of our shows. That brings in a lot of the tourism for our county and our state until we are at 60% vaccinated status. And that's not including like the people who are already immune to it through natural means. They have to get the vaccine too. The state basically said they're not going to enforce it. They're going to rely on the corporations to enforce it. And like EDC and Burning Man were going to require some sort of proof of vaccination in order to go to those shows until EDC pushed it back and Burning Man went to online only. And that's one of the biggest things about Nevada right now is that they are going to rely on those corporations in order to do this, because like the casinos are the biggest employers in our state, and they will actually vaccinate you if you get hired there or you're working there. They'll actually vaccinate you on site, so you don't even have to pay for it. One of the other things that I was worried about for the most part is the health department here will make rules about, like they made rules about the mask mandate, and that's how they've been enforcing the mask mandate here, is by basically telling businesses you can only have this much if you don't have the mask mandate. And if you do, then you can have this much. And kind of that bureaucratic control of our lives that has really been seeping into everything. With our lifeblood being tourism, this is a great concern for Nevada, because this will just decimate our tourism industry. I see it.
So first of all, my heart goes out to you guys in Nevada and Georgia and California, because it sounds like that some of the measures out there have been absolutely stringent. Here in Utah, we just recently, I think it was April 10th, I forget the exact date, but sometime in April, the governor recently just took off the mask mandate. And I'm much like Danita. I'm very much more of a libertarian-minded individual, but at the same time, there are certain instances where the government needs to step in. The businesses are refusing service to people based solely upon one aspect or one thing. That goes against the Equal Rights Act. And not to mention that it's going to destroy tourism around the world. For instance, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, the head of the EU, the European Union, has said that they will start allowing people in from vaccinated countries and only people in who are vaccinated. But right off the bat, there are millions of people who are questioning the validity of these vaccines, especially based on that New York Post story. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it showed a picture of a man and blood clots in his legs and how bad they were. His legs were completely purple and just swollen.
The skin peeled off. Yeah.
Yeah.
The skin peeled off. It was horrendous.
Perfect.
And up to that point, for me personally, I was like, no, I think I'll get the vaccine. I mean, I may not like it, but when I saw that picture, I'm like, I'm not getting the vaccine. I agree with Courtenay. It's blatantly unconstitutional to deny people a service based solely on that. But the thing is that Congress and politicians nowadays, especially on the Republican side, they don't have a backbone for the most part. There are very few governors, very few state legislatures who are actually doing anything to stand up against this medical tyranny. And B, the Democrats, when they take power, they refuse to relinquish it, as we're seeing with our previous podcast, HR 1. And they will start cracking down on people who do not have it. They're essentially setting up a new caste system, where if you do not refuse to get the vaccine for valid reasons, then you're not going to be a part of the in crowd. You're going to be ostracized. So the social consequences of this are just automatically going to be horrendous. Not to mention the fact that it feels as though this is a brand new religion, the state religion, and the God is science. And I love and respect science, but the interesting thing about science is that we as humans are constantly learning new things. And so anyone who's like, oh, I'm an expert in this field, well, you know what? That field may change in 10 years. So I would say I'm the leading authority, but not the expert, because expert automatically denotes that you know everything. Nobody can ever know anything, no matter how much knowledge you have in one particular area. And Fauci hasn't actually done anything in his entire medical practice other than work with China and Wuhan.
So I know that they've already really tried in really shockingly, of all places, in Orange County, and there was tremendous pushback. So now they're trying to kind of obfuscate, and they're not really calling it a passport. But they're doing exactly what all of you have alluded to, with regulations from corporations. And to me, this is a huge concern because, one, it is not legal. These are experimental. And every single one of the websites says that. These are not FDA approved. These are emergency prophylactic, which is kind of an oxymoron. I don't know how you have something emergency prophylactically because emergency is usually an acute treatment of something. But that's what this is. It's an emergency prophylactic treatment. Or not even treatment, but experiment. And so it is not legal to mandate something of that sort. So that is a huge concern. I agree that it is creating a caste system. I mean, this is very reminiscent of Nazi Germany. In fact, the New England Journal of Medicine actually suggested that children who have been vaccinated get yellow stars, or they didn't say yellow, but stars, Freudian slip there. And to me, that is just so incredibly reprehensible that they would even consider, pushing this on children. It is experimental. We don't know what the consequences will be. My other concern really is about the people who have medical concerns. On all of these websites, they talk about people who have any sorts of allergies are at tremendous risk for anaphylaxis. And they don't disclose all of the ingredients. And I'm not just talking about the, experimental components of these mRNA or the viral vector mechanisms. Not just that. Of course, we don't know the full mechanism of how that works because it is experimental and it's novel. So we don't have all the information on that, and they don't disclose all of that. But they don't even disclose all the ingredients, the fillers, and just, what's being injected into you and what facilities they're cross-contaminated with. And that's a grave concern for people who do have allergies, especially people who are anaphylaxis. They could die on the spot. And so where are their exemptions? That needs to be discussed. That needs to be addressed. People need to be able to. And what happened to religious exemptions? Mm-hmm. To have something injected into you, lots of people, that does not comport with their religious beliefs. So that needs to be addressed as well. And as we've seen from the mask mandates, they're not honoring the Americans with Disabilities Act. They are not honoring religious exemptions. They're using the COVID emergency as a blanket excuse to push through whatever mandates. Mandates are not laws. People need to understand that as well. There is a difference between the two, and laws trump mandates. And the Americans with Disabilities Act is a law. These mask mandates are mandates. So that's really what I'm concerned with. But hopefully the FDA does not approve. It just does not pass, FDA approval. But at that point, if it did, then we'd have to worry about it being legal to put an actual passport mandate. But at this time, it's not legal to do that. But what we do need to be concerned with is these corporations who are being incentivized. I mean, even Biden said that he would not make a federal mandate, but that he will, encourage corporations to enhance their COVID safety, security. I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but it was something to that effect with the vaccines. So I think we do really need to be concerned about what the corporations will do and how they will make lives very difficult if you are not vaccinated. And I think the other thing people need to be concerned with is that we don't know much. I'm in the process of doing deep dive research on this, and I'll have an article on it, but we don't know what the consequences of the shedding of the vaccine are. We do know all vaccines shed. That's not new information. Most of the research shows that up until 70 days, someone can be in close proximity, and it can be through inhalation. Certainly, other close contact is puts you at risk for vaccine shedding. And that's true of all vaccines, of course, because this is novel and experimental. We don't really know the full consequences. And we've seen some anecdotal stories that are not looking all that encouraging. And that is something people do need to be concerned with. And people should have the right to, what about their safety? If you're being put into an environment where everybody is being required to be vaccinated, then those people are going to be vulnerable and be at risk of being in contact. And it's even in the Pfizer manual. They say that people, they particularly talk about pregnant women, that there is a huge concern about shedding with even these vaccines, quote unquote vaccines. But so I think the passport is something that a lot of people should really be concerned with. And I think we should really be concerned not just with the technical passports, but how they're going to, because there's been so much pushback. I've seen it in California. They're now trying to change the terminology, but it's still the same thing. So I think we need to be concerned about the wolves in sheep's clothing that we might be faced with.
I have heard they're maybe in the future trying to make it a part of the State Department when you actually apply for a normal passport. And when you apply for a visa, you'll have to show that you've been vaccinated with your vaccine passport card. That's really concerning because there are people that either will choose not to get it or that simply can't get it. So does that mean that they can't ever travel anywhere? They can't ever go anywhere because they don't have this vaccine? And the problem that I have with this is if vaccines work, right? If this vaccine works for the people that get it, why are you worried about people that don't get it? Okay. If that person decides not to get it and you think that they're going to die because they don't get it, well, that's on them. And yeah, they might die. Who cares? That's their choice to make. And to have a passport in order for you to participate in sporting events, concerts, in order for you to go buy your groceries, in order to do all of those things, you have to take something that is equivalent to chemotherapy. That should be very illegal. I think that it should be unconstitutional. Now, the problem is the precedent isn't really on the side of people that don't want to get the vaccine at this point. There have been times in the past where, for the greater good of American citizens, they have done vaccine mandates, which is just a whole nother thing. But I also think that former Vice President Joe Biden, he says, well, I'm not going to say that I'm going to mandate it, and I'm not going to say I'm going to have a passport. But he also said he wasn't going to end fracking and cancel the Keystone Pipeline. So what did he do a couple days into office? We all know he's a liar. And I would not put it past him or put it past the rumors for them to be true, that he might actually use the State Department in order to push this through under his rule and reign of the country.
Yeah.
Anything else on the regulation of it and who we might see regulate it? Go for it.
I just got one thing. This is just straight up child abuse. I heard the most heartbreaking story I've ever heard, where a mom came to pick up her little girl from preschool, and she reached down to take her daughter's mask off, and the girl started screaming, yelling, "Mommy, the air's going to kill me." Children shouldn't have to be worrying about that type of stuff. And the fact that they're being indoctrinated at their schools is incredibly wrong. And the fact that that's eventually going to be the next thing that they push at schools is like, oh, if you don't get a vaccine, you're going to die. And you know that in the way the current education system is going right now, that they're going to do that because they just don't care about teaching anymore. They care about indoctrinating and making good, stupid idiots. Mm-hmm. And they're literally trying to make a bunch of little Leninists.
It's funny. So Tom McDonald, he's a new rapper that does kind of a lot of political stuff. He says in one of his raps, he says, as a child, we're taught to walk and talk, but as adults, we're told to sit down and shut up. And it's so true. That's what's been happening for the last 20, 30 years. In preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, you're taught, oh, you can be anything you want. The sky's the limit, right? But now, and then when you get older, they're like, no, that idea is stupid. No, that question is stupid. You're stupid for saying that. It's like, wait, how did this happen, right? And then as adults, by the time you get into college, you're just like, I don't care about my life. I don't care about a career. I don't care about breathing. I don't care about anything. And it's so true. As kids, you're taught to walk and talk, but as adults, all they want is for you to sit down and shut up and just obey and follow the crowd. Follow the crowd. So the next question that we have is the legality and precedent for vaccine passports. What is your opinion, or the opinion of maybe those around you? I know that some of us have talked to our fellow human beings in which we come into contact with about the vaccine passports before coming to this podcast. So can we just get a little bit about the people in your area and how they feel about the legality of vaccine passports and maybe what the precedent is? Sean?
Well, living in a liberal city, most of the people I've talked with are actually okay with it. The people inside my immediate family are not. But even some of the more Republican-leaning people I know are saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to get the vaccine eventually once they force it upon us. Once it stops me from being able to live my life how I want to live my life, I'm going to get the vaccine. I bring up all the negative side effects that people are reporting that is being hidden on social media. And they said, I don't care. I want to be able to live my life and not worry about politics and not worry about all this stuff. So that's one of my fears, is that that's how enough of the population is going to be, that is going to create this peer pressure that's just going to get even more people. And we could be seeing like 60-70% of the population going just because of peer pressure. That's how I feel is what's going to go on.
Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's several of my friends in my circle, they've already gotten the first or second shot. I haven't really pushed people because, I try to let people make their own decisions. But it doesn't keep me from providing them information, and it's not my opinion I'm providing. I'm just saying, hey, go look at this, go listen to this, think for yourself. I mean, don't go do stuff just because you're scared you won't be able to go to the movies or you won't be able to fly on an airplane. I mean, we're not there yet. Okay. So just put the brakes on a little bit. I think sometimes these people still live in the good old days of the 70s and 80s where, it's like, hey, everybody's happy. They say, go do this. And they got your best interest in mind. Back when, y'all weren't probably even around, back in the 70s or early 80s where, things were just, hey, loosey goosey. That's whatever feels good, go do it. But yeah, they're doing it. And it shocks the hell out of me when information is available and it's reported and it's there. And it's not just, somebody, I'm not a doctor, but when there's actual world-renowned microbiologists telling you, don't do this. I'm telling you, don't do this. This is bad. And this is like, oh, well, it's very shocking to me. So I want to point out just one thing. 0.05% infection to death rate for people under 70. That's 5 in 10,000. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you're under 70, why would you take a vaccine for that? I mean, your chances of dying is, I don't know. I think you almost have much a better chance of dying in a car wreck. So why are you going to take a vaccine that is emergency use? We really don't know what the long-term effects of it. You're going to take that for something that is almost equivalent to a cold killing you. The chance of a cold killing you is almost zero, and then 0.05% is almost zero. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell people except to just say, hey, go research stuff, go read, and make your own decision. And then if you still go do it, then hey, God bless you, and I hope everything's okay.
At the convention the other day, something that I was telling people, and this is my biggest thing with Truth Matters, is I just want to provide the education and the research, the start for people to do their own research and educate themselves and those around them, right? I don't want you to take my word as fact. I
Right.
don't want you to take anybody's word as fact. I don't think that people should be making decisions out of fear, whether you're fearing that you're going to die without the vaccine or with the vaccine. So if your decision to not get the vaccine is based on fear that you're going to die from it because someone told you you might die from it, that's not a good reason to not get the vaccine, because that's not getting the vaccine out of fear. Now, if you are also getting the vaccine out of fear because someone told you that you're going to die if you don't get it, then you should not be getting the vaccine for that reason either. Now, if you have done tons of research, you have looked at things from people like the frontline doctors who are world-renowned virologists and biologists. You've done the research on that side. You've done the research on the gung-ho for the vaccine, right? You've done all this research, you've educated yourself, and you then decide to get the vaccine. Go for it. That is a good reason to get the vaccine. If you then decide not to get the vaccine after all that stuff, then don't get it. Okay, that's awesome. Don't get the vaccine. But to make either decision based out of fear without any education and any research present in your decision, I don't think that is a good decision-making skills. As for the legality and the precedent for it, Courtney, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people are going to be arguing is, and I've heard this argument made, is that we already pretty much do have vaccine mandates. Certainly, California is way further down this pike than the rest of the country, but it's in all the states, really. You know, you have X amount by a certain age, and then, you know, in order to enter school, you have to have this many. Certainly to travel to other countries, there's a bunch of vaccines you need to take depending on where you're traveling to. And that's the argument that I hear. But I want to go back to what I was saying before. These are experimental FDA. They are for emergency use only. They are not approved. So they cannot be mandated the way that an FDA approved vaccine could be mandated. So that is currently where things stand. My personal hope is that these don't get FDA approved. I don't think there's been enough time. Right now, the people who are getting them currently are technically the clinical trials. Clinical trials usually go on for years. This has been a few months. So I don't think that 3 months is enough time for there to be a valid FDA approval. So I'm hoping that that does not happen. But as it stands right now, there is no legality, there is no precedent that says that this could be legally mandatory for anybody.
So I'm with Courtney. I have not seen anything precedence-wise supporting the legality of this. I could be wrong, though. And I also just recently saw an article on Slate where they were talking about the vaccine and how the U.S. Constitution basically does mandate, and that's the exact same argument that Courtney was making, about getting vaccine passports and having to get a vaccine. And for those of you who have studied this, I got a question for you. So isn't one of the prerequisites in order to get an effective vaccine to actually isolate the root and where it came from?
Are you asking us, Ethan, or are you asking the viewers?
Both. I'm asking the viewers, and that's a question for them to think about, and also to you guys, because you guys have obviously done a deeper dive into COVID than I have in the vaccine.
Traditionally, in a vaccine, I'll answer to my knowledge. And again, I'm not a doctor, but from the research that I've done, you know, traditionally vaccines work that way. They've isolated the virus, and then they use an attenuated variation of that virus. So that means it's a much weaker strain. It's either live or dead, weak strain of that particular virus. And there are some cases where it's a hybrid. They inject that inside you. That's the vaccine. There's always other fillers and, you know, things in it as well. It's not just the virus. Because they need a mechanism to transport and for the body to receive it. And that, you know, varies depending on the brands and the virus itself. That's typically how a traditional vaccine works. And the theory behind it is that you will create antibodies, which will develop an immunity, and therefore you will be immune for life. So for instance, you take like the smallpox, you take the MMR, the MMR is given at 1 year of age, never given again, because you are immune in theory for life. That's the hypothesis and the theory behind vaccine protocols. This is very, very different. They do not inject the virus into you at all. There is no what they purport to be COVID-19 inside any of these 3 brands that are calling it a COVID-19 vaccine. None of them have quote unquote COVID-19 in it. And furthermore, none of them say that you will be inoculated and immune from COVID-19. In fact, just the opposite. A lot of people are already experiencing more severe reactions to the virus itself. The virus that we are being told is COVID-19. They are also saying that you need, in the case of Moderna and in the case of Pfizer, you need 2 shots. In the case of Janssen, it is 1 shot, but they're saying that most likely you will need a second booster shot 6 months down the road. And now they're starting to say there's a possibility it could be every 6 months, every 3 months. They don't know. But they are saying that regardless of whether you get booster shots, that you still need to wear masks, socially distance, all the other protocols, the hand washing and whatnot, which indicates that it is not like a traditional vaccine where they put the virus into you.
So I just want to mention for the viewers, if you guys honestly have any questions for us, please write them down in the comments. Also, Courtney's article about the vaccine itself, we will link in the description below. There are 32 citations in that article alone. It's 8 or 9 paragraphs long, but 32 citations. And most of those sources are .gov sources.
Yeah.
Okay. Or they are from the direct website of Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. Okay. They are directly from CDC, from Pfizer, from Moderna, and from Johnson & Johnson. So if you guys have questions about that, go to those sources and research for yourself and maybe read the article while you're at it.
Yes, I was just confirming. Yeah, NIH, CDC, the WHO, and yes, all 3 direct websites as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So anything else about the passports themselves? Do we have any other comments from anybody?
I'd just like to add one comment, what the legal definition of a vaccine is. It's a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease. If it doesn't produce immunity, it is not considered a vaccine. That's the legal definition. That legal definition resides in multiple states where they define what is a vaccine. If this does not produce immunity, that's why they got away from calling the flu a vaccine. It's really not a vaccine.
Flu shot. The flu shot. Flu
now,
vaccine anymore. Yeah.
No, it's no flu vaccine. It's a flu shot. All it is a preventative treatment. To be honest with you.
So I just want to respond to 2 things there. One, the flu vaccine. What they do is there are billions of flu viruses, just like there are tons of coronaviruses. And with the flu, they a gamble of what's going to be the most prevalent strain that year, that season, and they take a guess and they, inject you with that particular strain. The problem with that is that viruses mutate very quickly. Usually within the span of a few months. So typically by the time that you are going to come in contact with this potential flu, it's already mutated and then you are no longer immune to that strain. And you also don't know if you're going to come in contact with the strain, in general, because the probability is not in your favor because there are so many of them. And that's why you can't just get one flu shot and be immune for life, because who knows what flu it is. But what I did want to bring up was very related to this. I think we need to be really cognizant of, as we were saying, in the previous podcast, is the language that they use. And I think that because there's been such pushback on the term vaccine passport, they're really going to do their best to ram this through without calling it a passport. And I think that's something we need to be really aware of and strategize how to fight against it, because there is nothing about this that I think should be legal or does benefit the people, because there are tremendous risks. And, what happened to my body, my choice?
Well, that's actually interesting. My body, my choice. If you're looking at it from the left's perspective, it's completely consistent. But that's only if they understand that the fetus itself is a life. It is another person. Both of those arguments are, I would like to project my will onto another person.
Even with vaccine, that's relevant. So the problem with my body, my choice in the case of abortion is it's not just your body, right? You have a partner that has created this life with you who should have a say, not just the female. And then there is the child life. So why do you get to dictate the outcome of that human being? So it is not just my body, my choice in that case, but I don't think it is in the case of the vaccine either, because as we now know, there are consequences of all vaccines shed. We don't know what the ramifications of this particular one will be in terms of the shedding. We have anecdotal evidence, but we don't have clinical studies to show us because it's too new. And that is a concern, though, because it's not just your body.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ethan.
So something else I really think that we haven't focused on is the fact that at what percentage will they allow us to start reliving our life? Jim Jordan at the congressional hearing pressed Dr. Fauci on that. And Dr. Fauci kept trying to slide like, oh, we'll give you a specific number in the future. No. At what percentage do we get our lives back? It is no longer just an issue about public health. It is now an issue about public control.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing is that no matter how much Jim Jordan pushed Fauci wouldn't answer him, because Fauci got a little bit of power. He's not going to relinquish it. And the Democrats have realized this is a vital tool. And there has become an obsession with fear. And we see that fear being promoted in a variety of issues. First, race. Second, the environment. And thirdly, this pandemic. We have become obsessed with fear. And it's an addiction. And we're seeing that with CNN, right? They're promoting that. That one technical director came out and said, fear sells. So when do we get our life back? What percentage do we have to get vaccinated before we get our lives back? And they can't give us an answer.
And no one can. No one can give us an answer. So any last comments?
I was just going to say, like I said, in Nevada, we do have a number at 60%. And then we can open up 100%. But at the rates we're going, we're not going to hit that.
Has that number ever changed? Was it originally
not
40%?
As I'm aware.
Okay.
No, they have different numbers depending on what percentage we can open back up on. And 60% is the number that they said for 100%.
60% of what? Of
people vaccinated.
Oh, wow.
Of Clark County vaccinated. Specifically.
Clark County is one of the most democratic districts in the country, right?
It's pretty, which is funny because when I voted, everyone in line was waving a Trump flag.
Wow.
In Nevada, in Clark County.
Yeah, it was like incredibly pro-Trump, like everyone in line. It was the most insane thing. Trump shirts everywhere. I was like, oh, is he actually going to win Clark County? And he didn't. There's that melon voting.
Oh.
I do want to say in terms of the numbers, you brought up the Fauci and Jim Jordan, and Fauci kept bringing up cases. And I think that is relevant because the cases don't indicate anything. The cases are based on a PCR test, literally test for any coronavirus. Now, for those who don't know, the common cold is also a coronavirus, and they are then subject to multipliers. The multipliers are traditionally supposed to be set at 17. They're often set at 40, but they can be set at whatever the powers that be decide they'd like it to be set at. So we're now testing for any coronavirus at whatever multiplier they decide they would like the outcome to reflect. So that's a
Mhm.
big concern when someone starts saying that we need to be so concerned with cases, because cases of what? Cases based on a test that don't really give us any information that's relevant to what we're testing.
Since we're on the topic of cases, in states where they haven't been super stringent, cases have gone down.
Like Florida.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Courtney was saying. What Courtney's talking about is multipliers, is cycles. So a PCR test is set to a number of cycles.
Yep.
So it takes a little piece of whatever kind of virus it has and just keeps on doubling it. Well, if you take something and keep on doubling it, you'll soon get enough cycles where it shows up and you'll have a positive. It's the same adage. You take a penny a day and you double it. How long does it take to be a millionaire? It's 27 days. It's
also like if you were to test everybody hair for lead, everybody would have some lead in their hair.
Sure.
And then you run it through the PCR and then put the cycles up to 40. We have a lead pandemic. We need to be very concerned.
You're about to die.
Yeah. That's always the outcome. You're going to die. Like,
You're gonna die.
No, that's not even.
Well,
the
you are
case.
going to
Like,
die. We were all going to die. That's one of the guarantees of life.
It's true. The circle of life. We are all going to die, and we are all in the circle of life. And it's funny because I actually put something on our Telegram page, at Truth Matters Telegram page, where I said, "Be a lion in the circle of life." And fight for your life in the circle of life. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. As I said before, and as all of us have said before, all of the links and sources will be in the description below. Please comment if you have questions, concerns, whatever it is. Let us know. Please subscribe. Give us a big thumbs up. If you would click the little notification bell, that will let you know when we have new videos coming out and when we have new podcasts.
Let's be honest, they're probably going to ban this because we're talking about some no topics.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you guys for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful, blessed day.